I'm Cathy. I did a law degree, and so I've always been interested in law. And when I heard that they were changing the benefit system in about 2012, 2013, I started to research it, and I realised that it was going to be really, really, really bad. And I wrote Universal Credit in the self-employed post on my completely unrelated blog, which was just to do with permaculture, and I wrote a briefing paper. And from that, over the years, I'm now admin for a Facebook group which has got getting on for 16,000 members. It was 15,000 when I checked earlier, and there's probably more to approve now, because now they're actually migrating everyone. All those people who didn't know anything about it are now suddenly finding that they needed to have known something about it. So so I thought it's sort of about the right time to actually come and do a talk on it. I mean, everybody's welcome to come and chat to me anyway in my stall, get it here, down over there, but I thought I would come and do it here. I'm not quite sure how my timings are going to work out, so I have set a few alarms, so if you hear something strange, that's what it is. As a bit of, just a bit of an interest, who here is self-employed? Okay, right, and who is already on Universal Credit? Quite a lot of you, so it might be a bit late for a lot of things I'm going to say. Who's still on tax credits facing migration? Anybody? Okay, that gives me a bit of information because... Sorry? Yeah, that's it. That's your one who's facing... Right, I might address everything to you then, because it might be time to save you. Okay, so has everybody had, a lot of people have had their gateway interview, so so some of it might be a bit redundant, but you never know, because you might be able to get reclassified or something if you needed to, and there's probably the information is going to help with the... Yeah, it's the same because it's all one benefit. But that sort of leads on to what I was going to say about what I'm going to say today and what I'm not going to say today. And I realised that I'm going to say what I'm not going to say first, which is I'm not going to talk about the general stuff. I'm going to try and relate it to self-employment, because there's loads of information out there now. I mean, it's sort of got beyond the Universal Credit is going to replace 6 other benefits or whatever it is. I mean, that affects everybody. The fact that... they're all rolled in together, so it's whether you work or not. So I'm going to sort of focus on what's the most important, which, like I said, might be a bit late for some of you, and navigating the system and trying to optimise and minimise problems, and then signpost you to resources and help, which is going to be a very short section, and think about a little bit about the possibilities for legal challenge, because I think some of the things have got more merit than others, because a lot of people, of course, are just spending all the time saying, oh, it's not fair, oh, it's really awful, it's disgusting how they treat the self-employed, but that doesn't actually get anything changed, because you've got to actually get somebody into court, really, and you can change it by get your own situation changed by getting it against a tribunal. But if we're going to change the law, we've got to get some test cases. So in terms of what is the most important for self-employed, I think I suppose the first thing I probably ought to say is that none of this applies if you haven't got work requirements, because I expect some of you here have probably either got caring responsibilities, or you've got young children, or you've got a disability, or all three. And so a lot of the stuff it's much worse for people who are actively self-employed doing their work on a daily basis, sort of thing, because you've got a work requirement, so you fit into one of the 2 regimes that have work requirements. And the other thing, which you probably will know if you've already been in that situation, is it also applies to directors of limited companies, because they treat directors of limited companies who've also, the majority shareholder of a limited company, as self-employed, as if they're a sole trader, and that causes its own sort of hiccup. So that's, I think, the most important thing really is deciding whether or not you want to be gainfully self-employed, and that is a legal term. I probably need to rephrase it, because I know a lot of you now are going to have already been classified as... Who is gainfully self-employed? And who has been found not gainfully self-employed? Oh, okay. Well, that means there's some people who I'm not sure about now. Oh, did you? Oh, well done. Yeah, okay. So you're still not on, you have still not migrated. Okay, good. I'll address it to you as well then, all the stuff, because one of the most important, sorry, were you saying? I'll tell you in a minute. I'll try to. I'm going to try to stick to my thing, because if I don't, then it'll all go wild. Yeah. So yeah, there's this distinction, and I say that the most important thing is deciding whether you want to be gainfully self-employed or not. And so with the self-employed regime, it's a legal term. I mean, I always use capital letters for it. It's a defined legal term. And it's not got anything to do with whether it is gainful for you or not. But it decides whether or not you're going to be put into one regime where you don't have work requirements on a sort of hourly basis, because everybody else, if you're not gainfully self-employed or if you're unemployed, you have to do so many hours work or work-related activity, or i.e. job search, a week. And that's sort of mostly 35 hours now, getting on for 35 hours, because they've just raised the people with children from 16 and 24 up to 30 as well. So if you've got work requirements, they're probably going to be of either expected hours of 30 or 35 hours a week. So if you're not gainfully self-employed, you might have, say if you've got a job, if you're doing 30, say it's 35, so if you're doing 35 hours a week, then that's okay, you're fine. And because they'll know you're getting paid minimum wage, because you've got to be paid minimum wage if you're employed. So if you're not doing that many, you've then got to go in and they'll try to get you to find more work, and you'll have to do work-related activity, work on your CV, or go for jobs and all of that sort of stuff. Now, if you're gainfully self-employed, you get the so-called benefit of not having to do that, which is good. It is good, but we've got the problem with the minimum income floor, which I'll have to talk about in a minute. I think probably is better than talking about it now. I don't know. Maybe it is better. I mean, does everybody know what the minimum income floor is? Yeah, well, it might not be as easy as that. Yeah, well, basically, it's an assumed income. So you get the first year, you should get the first year, and this has been one of the problems, you should get the first year as a startup period where you don't have it applied. So, because a lot of people go into their gateway interview thinking, oh, yeah, they're all excited, and I'm going to do my hobby, and I'm going to turn it into a business, and I'm going to do this, that, and the other. It's fine for a year, but then if they got the business plan and they get found gainfully self-employed, but after a year, if they're not earning enough money, they're going to get their earnings assumed to be 35 times national minimum wage, which they keep putting up because they think that's a good thing. And it isn't. It's awful for the self-employed on universal credit. So that's the two differences. So sometimes it's better to get some sort of hybrid thing, which is why I think that's possibly one of the more useful things I can talk about today. Yeah, so it'll depend on whether or not if you're found to be GSE, then you'll hopefully get your startup year, and then they'll apply the minimum income floor if you don't earn enough. If you decide that is really not going to be good, I mean, I didn't worry too much because, well, various reasons, but I mean, I'm quite a lot older. If I knew I was going to be on universal credit for years and really relying on it, I think I might have been trying to think of some way of making it so that I wasn't gainfully self-employed and didn't have to worry about the minimum income floor.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What if I'm working part-time at the moment, but I'm going in as self-employed? Is that a possibility?
Yes, I mean, that's one of the things that I was going to say. So I think, I think I've sort of actually covered some of the things that I was going to do on my next page anyway. So you need to be given the startup period. Now, if you think that, well, I suppose, yes, I can may as well just answer your question, really, because that is one of the ways of navigating it. I think I might have leapt to the next page, possibly. If you get your expected hours to be slightly more, if you get your employed hours to be slightly more than half your expected hours, you should be found not gainfully self-employed. Or you should not be found gainfully self-employed, whichever way you look at it. Say you would have had to do 30 hours, or say 35. So if you had 35, that's 34, 17. If you did 18 hours employed and 17 hours self-employed, you ought to be, all else being equal, you ought to be found to be not gainfully self-employed. So then you do your self-employed work as your work-related activity, ideally. I mean, there are problems with that as well. But anyway, so the first thing is, if you're found to be gainfully self-employed, this is most important for the people who haven't got, you decide which you want, think which way is it going to work best for you. Is it better to have all that time, 35 hours a week, to do your business? No meetings, no going off to these interviews and talking to daft 12-year-old work coaches who have had half a day as training, you know, and that sort of thing. If you decide it's definitely better, you think in a year you're going to be making enough money anyway, then gainfully self-employed will be best for you. If you don't think that and you think that you really would like to, this is actually your opportunity, because it's quite hard to go back. You know, once you've been found gainfully self-employed, they'll make you, I say make you in inverted commas really, because they can't really make you, but they try to make you to give up your business, basically. I mean, I think that's something that needs challenging really, whether or not they can actually do that, but they'll want proof that you've given up your business. No, you can't just go back to being unemployed sort of thing. So once you've decided which you want, then go into your gateway interview, or if you want to get reassessed, if you think, shit, I've been sort of, you know, that wasn't great, you know, it didn't work out right, you could try and get it so that you can get reassessed. And things you need to be able, the criterion for that 12 months when you're on your startup period is that you need to be taking steps to increase your income to the level of the minimum income floor. And that's pretty much it. It's not exactly a quote from the legislation. It's pretty much that. And that's sort of okay. If you go in, you're just starting a business. So people up until they started migrating everyone, when people were just on universal credit already and then starting a business, it was great because they went in and they said, oh, I've got my business plan, and they're all planning what they're going to do. And it was hard for their work coaches to say, that isn't going to work, because they aren't qualified to do that. So people were mostly getting their startup year. But what's happening now is that people are getting migrated. People like me who've been on that sort of 5,000 a year for about 20 years. I realised before I went in, I was going to have to convince them something's going to change, because and I think what people are doing is that, because a lot of people now are not getting the startup year, they're getting put straight on the minimum income floor, which is really bad, because obviously it's the people on the low income, so they're suddenly going from having tax credits, which has been fairly sort of hunky-dory from one point of view or another, and then they're just finding that they're being assumed to have all this. It's thousands, isn't it? 1,000 a year. A month. I haven't even worked it out what it is at the moment. It's £11.40 times 35 times 52 divided by 12 or whatever a month, sort of thing. It's loads. So they'll find that straight away. And I think what they're doing is they're shooting themselves in the foot when they go in. So you have to sort of. I think you've got to be a little bit strategic. And if you've not been earning much money and your business isn't profitable now, go in with all the enthusiasm for how that's going to change really soon. And that just now you're getting your universal credit. And I mean, a lot of us have got COVID. We can use COVID as the sort of, well, of course, then there was COVID. I was saying, well, I was a student, and now I bought Applegarth Hall, you know, because I was selling stuff on Amazon I meant to mention I've been self-employed since 2003. So, you know, but very micro self-employed. Basically, it's like pocket money, really, on top of what I used to think of as dole money, and think, oh, suddenly I got these little bits of money. So it's universal credit is really bad for those sort of, and it's not the social one. You're doing a business because it's good for your mental health, or because you've got a family, or because you home educate your children. It's all those sort of people. It's all the sort of people who are here, probably. You know, they're going to get affected by it the most. I've digressed a little bit, haven't I? There. So. There's strategies for going into your gateway interview, or if you think you need to be reassessed. Has anybody not been given their startup year, who was found gainfully self-employed, not being given it? You have? Okay. All right. That's interesting. What did they say?
At the interview,
Yeah.
late April, I was on work tax credit, late April was my training course to do. At the interview, I was found gainfully self-employed.
Yeah.
A reference was made to minimum income floor,
Yeah.
which I was not then sufficiently well informed to respond at the time during the interview, but I did tell the person who interviewed me two things that are crucial. One is that I reach retirement age in a few weeks' time,
Yeah.
and the other is that I'd started a new business because I don't have a pension.
Yeah.
So I'm in a start-up period, which
Yeah.
they've not yet acknowledged.
So they've applied the minimum income floor.
Yes,
straight
I
away.
had one,
Okay.
I had one
you
payment
you
and
should
then no more
challenge that.
payments.
Yeah.
I've filed a note saying that, as far as I'm concerned, I did tell the interviewer that I was in a startup for a new business, and I've not responded yet.
Because that's an interesting one, because that sounds as if there's the startup period. There's a colloquial thing of what a business startup. We all use that word. They use it in generally, don't they? A startup business, and then it's a defined term for the universal credit thing. So of course, yeah, it sort of matters that you're emphasising that you need to be in the one that is the universal credit one. So. Yeah, I mean, if you don't, we'll do Q&A later, but if you do come over to the stall and we can have a chat about it anyway a bit longer. So I think you can challenge it. I think it should be challenged. And I think what people are doing is some people are just either, like this gentleman, sort of not being quite aware enough of how they've got to the terminology they've got to use, or the work coach asks questions in a way that you just say the wrong thing. People say things like, they try to justify why they're not earning enough money. I think that's one of the things. Somebody says, but you're earning, yeah, this is a stylized version. You're not earning enough money. Oh yeah, but I've got the children and I got this happened and that happened, that happened. But that isn't saying I'm going to be working my money. I'm working and increasing my income. You've got to pretend, really, and not lie. You've just got to frame it. You've just got to say, yeah, no, it's been like that, but I've got this plan. I've got that plan. I mean, you've got to go in with plans and enthusiasm. And I think people are perhaps going in and more making excuses. I don't know. It's hard to tell from the people that post in the group, that exactly what's happened. But that's the thing that I sort of think, for goodness sake, go in, it's telling them how you're going to increase your income, and then you'll get 3 monthly reviews. So then you've got to keep them. You've either got to. My work coach has said she actually wants to see an increase in income. And I was lucky because that was just before the summer, so I'll have sort of stall takings and things from here. So. If your business isn't, so show how things are going to change. So if you found not gainfully self-employed, don't let them tell you that if you're not gainfully self-employed, don't let them tell you your self-employed work is not work, because that's another thing that they keep doing, is saying, your business isn't good enough. Oh, you can't. Oh, you'll have to give up your business. That isn't true anyway. You can do it. But what they're saying is actually trying to tell people that they've got to do. So people are saying they're doing, say, 20 hours a week part-time job, and then they're doing another 15 working in their business. They're telling them they've got to do 15 hours job search. They're not accepting that this work on the business is work, which of course it is. And even if it isn't work, it's work-related activity, surely, so that's something that needs to be challenged. You don't have to give up your business to get a job. You really don't. And if they tell you do, I think it really needs challenging, and you've got all the various ways that you can challenge it, which actually it's all bunged up. I mean, like everything else, I think the whole sort of, even the mandatory reconsideration, which is the first step before a tribunal, I think it's taking ages. That's the trouble. But you do, if you get the thing changed, then you do get your extra money back if you've lost any in the meantime. So you'd have to do so for some people the best scenario might be a part-time PAYE job for just over your expected hours, like I was saying to you.
How many are only doing 10 hours at the moment?
Yeah, but you're doing 10 hours. What's your circumstances though? Are you single, child? Got
Single,
yeah. And you've got
I'm on housing, and I'm
no dependents, no caring
no,
responsibilities, no disabilities or sickness. No, you've got to do 35. Your expected hours will be 35 a week.
Is that including self-employed and?
Yeah.
And
so you do if you do 35, if you make it up with more than half of that with PAYE, you should be.
So I need to increase my.
Oh yes, you're doing 10 hours work. Yeah, increase it to 17.
To 17.
17, 34, 18. Sorry, thank you.
18, and then if I increase it to 18, the rest I can go
you really should be found not gainfully self-employed then, and then you put your self-employment into those other hours, and then you've got slightly different argument then, was when they then say to you, oh, that doesn't count, you've got to do job search. You will have to go for the interviews. I mean, there was the other thing. I suppose I'm probably jumping on again. No, I might not be jumping. That might be okay, actually.
So I need a increase by 18 hours, and then I can do gainfully.
8 hours. Well, if you're doing 10, if you do another 8. Yeah, because if at the moment, you'd either have to do job search. It depends on how many hours you're doing self-employed. But if you went in and said, you're doing 10. So if you said I'm doing 25 hours self-employment and 10 PAYE, they'll make you gainfully self-employed, and then they'll apply the minimum income floor after a year. You'll have the start-up
Right, I
period.
understand, yeah. So, but if I go in with 18 hours and then I can get around
Should
that.
yes, I say that because I wouldn't want to be, I can't
No.
be that sure, because it should be all right because of the fact that you'll be getting minimum wage, so even if it was done on money. But the other thing with the having a job as well as self-employment is this thing called the administrative earnings threshold. I don't know if anybody's heard of that, and that's something the AET gets misunderstood quite a lot. And there's a lot of sort of people saying, it's not fair because, and it sort of isn't fair. But the reason that they brought this in, what they did when they first started migrating people to universal credit, because it's been taking so long and they've been so behind. And when they were overworked, and what they did was they said that people who are working, if they're working and they're working so many hours, I can't remember what it is, or they're earning a certain amount. So this thing called the administrative earnings threshold. If they're earning that amount, and it may be about that sort of amount of money that the hours that you're talking about. I can't remember exactly. If you earn that amount, then they don't make you go in anymore. You don't have to. They won't make you look for more work. They don't make you go for the weekly interviews. They call it. It's technically, I think its proper name is something like working enough, and they call it light touch. But the problem with light touch is they don't count self-employed earnings towards the AET, and they also don't let you do anything. If you're gainfully self-employed, you just don't qualify at all. And the reason for that was that they were trying to stop having so many people going in for interviews, which is why that was applying to the employed people and job searching people, because they were having to go in. They couldn't cope with it all. It didn't need to apply to the self-employed because the self-employed were on their startup year or were doing their business, and they didn't have to go in for these interviews anyway. But the upshot of it is that it's really unfair, but there's some horrible situations that are happening in couples and it's often very gender sort of defined as well, because you've got the man, say, who's working between 35 and 80 hours a week, because you know what self-employed people are like, doing, say, plumbing or something, and she's at home looking after the kids, and maybe has got a part-time job, but she can't do reach the administrative earnings threshold. Well, because none of his wages count, none of his earnings count because he's self-employed. But she's got to earn the couple's AET, not the single person's AET. That's awful. I mean, that's one that really needs challenging. But yeah, so that's another benefit of this way of sort of circumventing the system if your earnings are low, because that's really what it comes down to. Is you might end up having to get a part-time job, or you might just, if you can live off the amount of money that you get and it's just a really low amount, you're happy with that in a year's time, then you can do that, because they will just leave you alone. They should do, after your startup period's over, they'll apply the minimum income floor any month that you earn less than the MIF, or they use actual earnings if you earn more.
Can I just ask one more? Sorry, I'm over here. Sorry.
Oh.
Sorry. Just ask one more thing. If it was kept to the 10 hours, does that mean that, and I said the rest self-employment, that I would just have a year before
the minimum income floor? Yeah.
And then I would get the minimum income floor. So I could still go in, and if I thought, right, I'm going to make this business work after a year, and just decided that would be up to me, but I couldn't go back.
But they might apply it straight away. It depends, because if you go in and they'll find you gainfully self-employed because that's your main employment. That's the words that they use. It's your main employment. So and they have to define that sort of by it being one's bigger than the other sort of thing. Right. So it's your main employment. If you're not earning much money, you've got to really convince them that you're going to increase your earnings to the level of the minimum income floor. So if they think, for some reason, if you say slightly the wrong thing, or if whatever, because this is happening to a lot of people, they'll find you GSE because they have to, because it's your main employment. But they'll just apply the minimum income floor straight away, like they did to the man over there. Right. In which case, you'll just be straight away assumed to be earning 35 times national minimum wage times 52 divided by 12, whatever that is. If somebody's got a calculator, I should have looked those figures up, shouldn't I? So I knew. But yeah, this is where it's like this. But I mean, do join the group. I've got.
I'm slightly confused, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. I think if you repeat it a lot of times, I think if it starts to sink in eventually. I know it's just a bombardment of different little technical things, but I think that's the thing. We have sort of found that there is a bit of a technical way through it. If you can sort of circumnavigate it. sort of
Right,
thing.
I'll add
But
my
yeah,
name,
join the group, and my contact details are on there. They're really out of date, those flyers, but I thought there was something that could be there for people to pick up. How are we doing for time?
I've got numbers for you. It's 1,744.
Is it? That's what they'll assume you're earning a month then. So then you get your award based on that. So if you're not, it's all right if you're earning that, that's okay. But if you're not earning that, then it's quite crippling. I mean, people are just giving up their businesses and getting a job, because they can't do anything else. Yeah.
So I'm over here.
I
I went for the gainfully self-employed. I did the year. I got to the point where its minimum income floor came, and it just completely wiped out anything they were going to give me from that point. Right? I'm not earning that much, but it was as if I was, so I got nothing.
Yeah.
So then I went back to.
Yeah.
Same happened to you. So then I had to close that claim, open a new claim, and basically beg and convince them that now I promise I'm not going to do any self-employed work. I have to take down everything from any website ever where I've ever put anything to advertise myself. And they'll do Google searches against me and could point out, well, you're still on this website. So then I had to go down and take all my stuff down about anything self-employed. And was literally begging them on the floor, saying, "Oh, I promise I'm not going to do any self-employed work. Please give me some money." And they did say, "Okay, well, you can be a job seeker again." But it was an absolutely traumatizing thing. It took me about 3 months to then get through that process and start receiving anything again. And then I did start receiving stuff. And then it's been a fucking mess since then. And now I'm terrified because, well, I've just done, maybe, hypothetically, I might have done a day's work of self-employment. And I'm just like, what the fuck is about to happen to me? Are they going to take that away? Because suddenly they've decided for one day of work in a year that...
If you have a small business or you're earning PIN money, you're allowed £1,000 before they can tax you or declare
It's got nothing to do with
Has
it,
it got
no,
nothing-
because that's the HMRC rules. I
Right.
mean, that's another thing you've got to
Yeah.
tell you. Well, the thing is, you have to tell Universal Credit as soon as you become self-employed, because that's a change of circumstance, because it's a change of your type of employment. So you have to tell them. That's a sort of legal requirement. It's just one of those things that you have to tell them, your changes of circumstance. But also, if you're self-employed, you've got to submit your income and expenses every month, which is actually really perfect lead into my next point, which I thought I better make, because I don't know quite how we're doing in time. So because there will be a Q&A at the end anyway. So but yeah, because of the it's all done a monthly assessment. I mean, you all know that if you're already on Universal Credit already, but it's monthly instead of annually, and that's another really big problem for self-employed. But yeah, because of that's why with that £1,000 you can't earn the £1,000 because you've got to tell Universal Credit the moment you earn. Well, 1p, I presume. I mean, I don't know. I mean, as soon because you'd have to do every month your income and expenses, even if you're below that. So you can't earn. Right, okay, so that's half past, right. You can't earn it and just earn something and not tell them. And in order to, as soon as you tell them that you're self-employed, they'll call you in for a gateway interview, and that's the other thing everybody needs to know if they haven't done it already. It's a payment blocker. So as soon as you tell them you're self-employed, and you've got to have your gateway interview. They call it a gateway intervention sometimes as well, but it's the same thing. You've got to have that before you get any money, and then you'll have to sort of submit your income and expenses. So yeah, it's quite that is another problem which people are finding is just the difference between Universal Credit and HMRC rules. It isn't that unusual because you get different rules for different areas of law. As I keep people are saying, oh, but how can it be? And well, you do get different law for different things. You probably have to keep two different sets of books. I mean, you probably do. I've set mine up as a spreadsheet where I can use the columns. I can just copy and paste the columns into my Universal Credit one and things, and it's not too bad. But it's worse for people who've got accountants. And what's even worse is that the accountants don't know anything about it, and they've spent all these years misinforming their clients because they don't know anything about it. And now they're not able to advise on or even incorporate Universal Credit at all because they were allowed to. I've just been talking to my accountant about it, and with tax credits. Because it was linked to HMRC, accountants were actually insured and permitted and trained and whatever to advise on tax credits. Whether or not, in fact, they understood it is another matter, but they were allowed to. But they're not. With Universal Credit, they can't touch it. So people who go to their accountants are going to have to be very careful that they don't get misinformed, because the accountant's not going to take any interest in universal credit and monthly assessment and all the various things that happen. So in terms of once you're if you've got the payment book as the monthly assessment, the general advice that we give people, it's not advice, it's advice in inverted commas, because the Facebook group, none of us are qualified or anything, but it's the general sort of advice that we give to people is there's things like don't spend loads of money before you claim, because you're going to make your claim soon. Somebody else was saying that they're going to claim soon. Don't spend loads of money just before. Make sure you spend the money just after. I mean, there is some merit, I guess, at some point, if you're trying to show that you're increasing your income. I mean, maybe you want to be making it look like you earn a bit more. I don't know. But I think generally you want to get it all in, get all your income in before you do it, and then do all your spending afterwards, because otherwise it won't count. Strictly in that month, strictly, I say cash in, cash out. It's not cash, it can be cash, checks, anything really, but it's very strictly that. Lots of questions about that in the group. That is, if you just stick to that, it's everything that happens within that monthly assessment. Oh, and you can choose if it matters to you. If you haven't claimed yet, if it matters when you want to do your monthly accounts, or when your direct debits go out or whatever, and you want your money paid, you can claim. It's fairly neatly. It's done from the day that you claim. I claimed on April Fool's Day. I thought it was great. I was really happy with that. So mine's 1st of April to, the 30th of April, and it's 1st to the end of the month. So mine's neatly each month. So that's something you might want to think about if it's too late, if you've already done it. You can make use of losses. That's another thing, is that they carry losses forward. They didn't used to. So it was a new bit of legislation brought in after the universal credit regulations. But if you have a great big bit of expenditure, it's probably better to have a big bit of expenditure at the beginning that you then carry forward, because they don't allow you to sort of keep money back. I mean, that's another thing. It's got to go through. You can't say, oh yes, I've earned this, but I need to save it for such and such to pay my insurance premium or whatever. You can, from the point of view of savings, you can keep it. Nobody's forcing you to spend it, and it won't count as capital because it's business assets, but it will have counted as income. You can't distribute it equally between all the months in the year, sort of thing, like you could effectively with tax credits. Yeah, so and the general thing is balance your income expenses as closely as you can, really. I mean, that's probably the best way to deal with the monthly assessment, which of course is really difficult for people in the festival industries and horticulture, agriculture, anything where you get paid in a big lump. I mean, people have had trouble. There was a test case brought by a woman who was an actor, and it was unfortunate because loads of people, all that Guardian comments thing, they're all saying, oh, get a proper job, and all that sort of stuff. And I think, well, who do they think does all this work? On the Netflix we binge watch, and it's, of course it's a proper job. And same with anyone who writes, or, people get paid thousands of pounds at one go, but they're doing all the work. She was saying that she had to keep going for auditions, and she doesn't get paid for the auditions. She's working, everybody's working, but they're not getting the money in, and then they'll get it in a big lump. So then they're getting the minimum income floor applied all the time. They're not earning anything, and then when they earn it, it wipes out the universal credit, because they've and you can get carried forward a bit. If you earn a lot, if it's over £2,500 over your what would stop you from, what would make you get a zero award, then that gets carried forward. So I was a bit worried about my takings at Glastonbury, for instance. I sort of thought, well, so I made sure that I had some bills that I paid to reduce that, so I didn't have to carry anything forward. Okay, I mean, I think I'm going probably about 5 minutes behind my time, but I think we're okay. Signposting to resources and help. You see my flyers. We've got the group. It's not an advice group. It is an information group, and it is a campaign group. And we've got quite a lot of knowledge, and you can treat that as advice if you choose. But we're not legally sort of qualified or insured or anything like that. But the best thing is, I've put down, help yourself. Don't ask your work coach. Don't talk to your work coach more than you can help it. Just be civil, just be civil. That's all. But don't ask them things. So people make so many mistakes. They ask them things, and then they're not very good at just saying, I don't know. They always say something, and then and we spend hours like correcting it and having to undo all this stuff that they've done. don't assume that they know what they're talking about. They really are very poorly trained. I mean, you might be lucky and get a good one. I mean, people do. Mine's not too bad. Mine was self-employed as well. She works at the job centre. I've only seen her once, but she works at the job centre, but she's also self-employed. So, gosh, at least she gets it, whereas a lot of them just absolutely haven't got a clue. The CAB, of course, is always good. I mean, again, it's not, if you don't get good advice from the CAB, go on a different day, because people they do their volunteers on a daily basis usually. So it varies. It can vary. But we'd lost one of the members of our group. Actually, she died in April, but she worked for Saltash CAB, and they had a actual universal credit team sort of thing. Well, she was it, they had an actual employed universal credit advisor. So I don't know how many CAB branches have that. It might be more common. It might not just have been hers. Maybe they all have one. So that's that's another, and sort of do challenge it, because people are getting their mandatory reconsiderations over, getting decisions overturned about the startup period and about various other things. There's things with there was a real breakthrough with the community interest companies, because to start off with, they were treating people who had got community interest companies as if they were, same as if they were sole traders. It's this analogous to the to a sole trader or partnership is the terminology. And so they were saying that the people were with community interest companies, they were getting given this money, they were getting grants and things like that, and they were counting that as personal income. So that was really bad. But it's not exactly enshrined in law as such, but there's some sort of internal DWP guidance. So if anybody's running a CIC, don't let them say that is your earnings. And I think the same should be, I think anything where people are saying, if you get grant in anything that's ring fenced given to you for specifics, even if it is a non, not a CIC, even if it's a limited company, or if you've got grant, even personally, I think if you're giving it for a certain purpose, you ought to be able to argue that. And I mean, ideally, we'd find people, be able to go a bit further, because I'm sure we can get lawyers to do it. I'm sure the Good Law Project would do it. Lee Day lost that case with the woman, the actor, and I've lost confidence in them a bit, because I think they didn't really argue the case well enough. They just didn't understand what they were saying. There were too many more points to be made, and I'm definitely personally really up for helping anybody who wants to take it much further up through the courts, because that's where I think it's most useful and I'm most interested. But certainly the community interest company stuff, anything with ring fence money, that really should be challenged. And people are overturning quite a lot of things. It's just, we need it. Yeah, we need to, in order to get things through the courts, we need to find the perfect client, who is somebody who's legally aidable, basically. So that means you've got to not own your own property or have any capital. And because you can get legal aid for some of these public law things. I'm a bit hazy with it. When I did law, legal aid still existed, but you can for public law things, because that challenge, there were a few people trying to challenge the minimum income floor, but you've got to be legally aidable, really, because it's just, I don't think we can get them to do it pro bono. Right, I think then that's probably the time for the Q&A, really. I mean, I expect you in the Q&A, I've got some common universal credit errors sort of written down as well, but I think I've probably covered some of them, and if not, they'll come out through the Q&A, I think. What time is it? Yeah.
Hi. Oh, hi. I don't really know how to get to my question, but I guess I'll just tell you my...
Let it all hang out. I've rambled enough.
It's friends
somebody else's turn to ramble.
So I think I'm somewhere between you two in that... So basically last year I was lucky to buy my own property at auction, but then my circumstances changed and I had to go on to universal credit. But because I own my own property, that is affecting things. So I was put in this, but I'm disabled. So I was put in the startup period for 12 months, during which time I was submitting sick notes and had a capability for work assessment, but they said I was fit for work. And so when the startup period ended, they were like, right, so you now just have to work 35 hours a week. And I was like, well, I can't, I'm disabled. But also, because for every £1 you earn, they're deducting 55p, I was like, if I worked they said 25 hours. If I worked 25 hours, if I worked 15 hours, if I worked, not very many hours, they only give me £390 a month. That will be wiped out. And I don't know if I'm just kind of, the system's just not working for me because I own that property, even though there's, I have no access to money in that. It's just, it's an asset. But after a few breakdowns to my job coach, she eventually said, well, if you can get a new sick note saying your condition has worsened, which I said, yeah, my mental health has worsened, funnily enough, as a result of all of this. Then they've kickstarted a new capability for work assessment, but I have no confidence that will be any different. And then it will stop again. But so I'm currently in a situation where, and the self-employed work I was doing with my main client, that's come to an end. So currently my entire income is that £390 I get a month from Universal Credit, and I'm almost too scared to literally not even listing secondhand clothes on Vinted, because for every £5 I earn, they're going to take away.
But you do still get more money. I mean, that is one thing about that, because back along, I'm old enough that I remember when we were only allowed to earn £4 a week, but at least you do earn 45 pence in the pound. So for somebody doing a job, it's perhaps a bit different if you're only earning a little bit on, because you're earning a little bit on your selling stuff. It might seem worse. If you were earning £11.40, all right, well, you're not working for £11.40. If you've got a job, you're working for 45p in the pound of that £11.40, which isn't great, but you are still getting more money than you would have had if you didn't earn it, So I think there's still that, which I think people forget sometimes, because you are better off. You won't be not better off. But what's happening with your property then? When did you get migrated? So they've kind of had to extend the startup period, or they're still paying me basically because we've kickstarted this new capability for work assessment. But they've literally, and they scheduled that. But you haven't got more than £16,000 equity in the property then, because otherwise you're just not eligible at all. No, I bought it at auction, so I own it outright. Yeah, I know, but that will mean that you'll be. Oh, you live in it. Yeah, I live in it. Okay. That's right. That's okay. So I thought for a minute you meant you'd owned this property. Right, okay, that's all right. If it's your main home, it doesn't count as capital. Okay. So I don't know. I'm just saying, am I missing something? Because at the moment I get, the £390 a month, and the fact I don't have to pay council tax, and free prescriptions. But I can't live off the 390, but I can't do, they want me to. I think that if I don't work 15 to 25 hours, I think you're in one of the situations that I'm one of the people who just slips through the net, really. Yeah, I think there's a lot of you, because one of my things about that I've got on my just wanted to check I hadn't missed something that I'm Fit Note does not remove work requirements. That is a real problem. Because you'd think that if you got a sick note from your doctor, that would mean you don't have to work. Well, some people manage to get their expected hours reduced, so they've sort of extended your startup period. It's not bad, actually, because that's work coach discretion, which, of course, what often happens is if people go in, it's not taken as read. People are going in with a fit note, which is a stupid thing to call it when you're not fit. So they go in with a sick note, and they then might reduce their hours. They might take all their hours away, but they could, but they often don't, and some of them just tell them where to go and just say no, we're not doing it at all, you've just got to work, and that's all. It's crazy, they shouldn't have that sort of power, they should be going by what the doctor says, for goodness sake. I've been to tribunal with it. But what's often happening to people as well they are still applying the minimum income floor, because of course you don't have to work, you choose when you work if you're self-employed. So I think it's something that needs challenging. I'm not quite sure how. I think because it's not, I don't know that bit of the legislation well enough, because I think it's a little broader than the self-employment thing, because it affects people who are working as well. It's not and all the sickness stuff I'm not very well up on, but I think it needs challenging, and anything that I think needs challenging, I think has got reasonably good chance of being of the judges finding in the person's favour, because it's just sort of natural justice, really. I think the issue is as well that which might be relevant for others here, that the capability for work assessment, it doesn't really work for energy limiting illnesses. I think probably the disability organisations are probably on this a bit, aren't they? And same with PIP, actually. It doesn't really work for an energy limiting condition. If you can walk 100 metres one day, then they're like, you're fine, and it's like, okay, but what about all the days I couldn't get out of bed?
Well, yeah, no, but I went to tribunal and they like tricked me and yeah, all sorts. Anyway.
Right.
So a very quick comment on advice and then a question. On advice, I'm very fortunate in the city where I live that Mind, the mental health campaign organisation, do superb benefits advice. And obviously, you might think, oh, well, that's only for people with mental health conditions. But by the time you've been through the ringer with the DWP, you probably have got one. So it's well worth considering Mind if there's one local to you especially. Maybe there's even national. That's the point. The question is a bit tangential. You may not know the answer. Well, the answer may be just a flat no. New enterprise allowance was binned off a couple of years ago. Are you or anyone else aware of either A, any replacement, be that at national level, Wales, Scotland or regional, or any nascent plans to replace or anything that's anything like a replacement for new enterprise allowance?
No, I don't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about it when it existed. It does get talked about in the group, and I usually there are some posts about it. And I think the usual thing about these sort of things, these sort of startup type things, or possibility of grants, or et cetera, people, the answer is usually see what there is locally. But yeah, I mean, join the group, have a look in the guides. Send your post to me and I'll decline it and tell you to go and look in the guides. That's the usual thing. But yeah, no, I'm afraid I don't know that personally. Yeah.
Hello. I had my yearly. I got forcibly because I moved, so I went on to Universal. I fitted Gainfully Self-Employed. I've just had my telephone interview to see. I went in saying there's no way I'm going to hit 1,700 quid. So what are my options? And then it was a human being. She went, just say, have you got a kid? And I went, and I've got one 18-year-old now. And she went, just say it. She went to speak to somebody else, and I asked her to put it in my journal because she says she's dropped it. Now I need to hit £1,152 a month rather than 1,700.
Why?
And because of my work, the 1,152.30 is the figure after the work allowance for the child.
Oh, your work allowance. So your child is still in
so they're still in education, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. The work allowance used to, when they first brought in the universal credit regulations, the work allowance applied to everyone, and they withdrew that, which is a real. I was going to swear, but yeah, it's a real nuisance because yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So initially, she just got. I was like, what do I do? Because I can't do 1,700. I
mean, actually, I mean they. Just a minute. They shouldn't have reduced your minimum income floor. What they should do is you'd be able to earn some money before you. Oh no, just a minute, because it does, doesn't it? No, you're right. The work allowance is adjusted. The other thing that does get adjusted, which is useful as well, there's a post that Marie did before she died. She did a really good post about and to work out exactly what you get with the minimum income floor, or your minimum income floor is, because they also use notional payments for tax and national insurance. So if you're below the personal threshold and you don't pay any tax, and if you choose, like me, not to pay any national insurance, basically you're not paying anything, but with your minimum income floor they're assuming you do, so you've got your work allowance and you'll get some notional national national insurance and tax taken off it as well, so that does help a little bit. So it's not quite the figure that whoever it was worked it out. And we've got a table, you can have a look at that post if you join the group, but that's a really good point. Yeah,
and
well, not as such. Well, people can. Well, they have got discretion, but to reduce it. But I mean, why? You've got to have some reason for why, haven't you?
I've got two children in special needs. I've got 3 children, 2 with special needs.
So they haven't got a disability that gets DLA that can make you their carer.
I am in the process of applying for DLA, which will then go on to...
If you can get to be a carer, you'll be fine, because then you'll have no work requirements, and that means no minimum income floor. So that's the ideal. Anyone who can be a carer, be a carer. Anyone can get on sort of disability thing, get on that, you know.
Is
And
it graded? Like, I mean, like he's in normal school and everything, but he requires.
There's 3 levels, aren't there? I'm not very good with disability things, but from what I remember, it's medium or high DLA will be enough to get you. And I think there's some stuff with PIP, but PIP is to do with
When he's an adult.
is what? Yeah, it's to do with whether or not you have to go through some other process. I think you can apply for carers straight away, right? Or I don't know. I probably don't know that well enough to know. But you don't. Oh, another thing that people who haven't migrated need to know if they have got disabilities is it doesn't carry over. You don't just because something's happening with you. Just, you know, you're getting something now with a disability thing. You've got to reapply and do this limited LTWRA. I mean, that's all I can think of it as, limited capability for work or work-related activity. But any of those sort of limited capability things will turn off your work requirements, and that turns off your minimum income floor and any job search requirements. So it's really the sort of holy grail, really. But yeah, I mean, that's the best that you can do. In the meantime, I mean, I guess, talk to your work coach and see if you can get it negotiated down, you know. But, and it will get backdated if you've. So you're in your startup period.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's least then. Hopefully, you'll get it sorted out before they apply the MIF. That's the main thing.
Last question at the back.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just about to go on to it, so I haven't been I'm not actually doing it, and a lot of these terminologies I don't really understand. If this is more for people that are on it already and sort of understand a bit how it's working. For me, I'm a complete beginner because I'm not on it. And is there anything you can recommend to do more?
I say read.
Because
I always tell people to read my briefing paper.
Gainful employment. I don't know what those are.
Yeah,
and so all these things are it's a bit gobbledygook.
Were you not here at the beginning?
Not for the first 8 minutes or something.
Oh, okay. That might have been when I was talking about
okay.
gainful self-employment. I probably rabbited on through it a bit, but I've got. If you join the Facebook group,
What is the Facebook group called?
Universal Credit and the Self-Employed. I've got some flyers down here. That's actually the web address, the Facebook address on those flyers, which are old. I did that as part of my MA, and that was for when they were. It was going to be coming in, but it's got the contact details. That's basically why I bought it. That's for the page. From the page, you can get to the group. Yeah. From the group, you answer the questions, and I let you in if you answer the questions. And then we've got all these guides, and I suggest read the pin post. Read the main guides, flip through the guides, have a look and see what there is.
Yeah, it's almost like I want universal credits for dummies. I just want to, because I need to start
I've written
the beginning.
I
beginning
wrote
of it.
a couple of posts recently on the page which sort of said things that you need to know if you're self-employed and going on to universal credit. You could read that. And my briefing paper you can download from the group, from the pin post. And again, it's written quite a long time ago. I did it in 2013, but it's written as if universal credit's going to come in and how is this going to work and what's going to happen, but a lot of the actual stuff is actually the same as it was, sort of thing. So it's got links to the legislation, which is sort of also.
Thank you very much, Cathy. Can you just tell us where your stall is?
Yeah, it's over. See that red and blue tent, Raconteurs, I think it's called.
Yeah,
it's just a bit further along. Get it here, it's called.
Get it here, beyond the Raconteurs.
You've probably all been anyway. I expect you've all going to tell me what hat you bought and all that sort of thing. But lovely, thank you very much.
So you're doing other
sorry
things.
I rabbited on through it, and you're welcome to come over.
Thanks very much, Cathy.
Of course.
That was brilliant.